of the bottom 6 teams, which we are going to look at today, Kingy, and what a pass mark will look like for them in season 2023. Of the 6, who gave you the most trouble, do you think? So when we're looking at the 6, we're talking North, West Coast, GWS, Essendon, and the Adelaide Football Club. Who gave you the most pause for, I've got a few questions over what a pass mark looks like.
That's a good question in itself. The Adelaide Crows.
Same.
Yeah, because I think you've got a really good coach, and I know that the list is still a fair way off taking a decent spike into the top 6 or even the top sort of 8, really, for me. I still think they're another couple of seasons away. Now, I know you get a lot of feedback on that, but at the moment, if they finished 8th this year, they would, to me, it'd be one of those straight out, first week finals gone, one of those type of years, and where does that really leave you? I think they're on the right pathway, but it's very difficult to sit here and say, yep, this is absolutely going to plan.
Yeah, that was my team as well, because I really like some of the stuff they've done, but I just look through their list and there's too many areas that I'm concerned about of their list to think, okay, they're going to play finals this year. And you've been out track watching, and I've heard you with Dwayne, and there's so much positivity coming out of every club, and there's so many clubs that are going to improve. Will Adelaide improve with the likes of those clubs that you've been watching? Like, it's so hard to predict who's going to finish in the top 8. Adelaide going to be in and amongst the teams we're talking about. No, Richmond, are they going to be with the Bulldogs? Are they going to be, I don't know what to expect from St Kilda. We'll get to them on a different day. But yeah, that was the hard one for me. But you can join in with that 0433 90 11 16. Just as we wait for Dewey, we might start on that, Kingy, and the last team was North Melbourne. So this morning what we're doing is we're working through the bottom 6 and coming up with what we think will be a pass mark for them this season. Now, some of the ins are important for North Melbourne. Daniel Howe comes in, Griffin Logue, Darcy Tucker, Liam Shields is the experience that comes in. And that's why I think they're going to be a much better team than they were last year. It's your team, so I might hand the microphone over to you because you know them better than I. North Melbourne, let's start there.
We'll start with the Kangas. Okay. Well, I don't think they're a 2-win team. So last year they win 2 games. They have a percentage of 55. It's a disastrous figure when you look at it in isolation. I guess the overarching question is, how many wins is Alistair Clarkson worth? He comes in to a team that I think is systematically or structurally flown blind for 3 years. I don't think they've had the adequate methods in place and the standards in place to be a good football team. So there's enormous opportunity in the group that's already there. And I know that when you're down the bottom of the table, you get some luxuries in terms of the draft picks that come in. But the AFL assistants for the future second and third round picks last year, to get Griffin Logue in, gives you the stability down back of Mackay, who I think's an excellent key post defender. He has all Australian capabilities, and Logue. You can build around that quite easily. And Logue's pre-season's been a slow build, but he's back right into it now. So I think it gives you a real chance to then play a little bit with the edges. I think that Luke McDonald is a fantastic back pocket type. They could probably ask more of him. Their 24 and unders are really well placed. LDU, Simkin, Powell, Phillips, Jackson Archer's had a fantastic pre-season. I think the biggest wild card and the shooting star for the Kangaroos is a guy called Paul Curtis. Kicked 12 goals last year, showed some signs they can do it in the air as well as at ground level. But all in all, the Kangaroo fans just want their team to be competitive.
And we're working our way through the bottom 6 teams and what a pass mark looks like for them in season 2023. Kingy had North Melbourne's at 6 wins. I've got it at 5. North fans 0433 98 11 16. As we move on to the West Coast Eagles, who also had 2 wins last year with a percentage of 59.8. They lost 10 games, the Eagles, by 50-plus points or more. There was mitigating factors around that in terms of COVID and injuries and all sorts of chaos. They take on North Melbourne in round 1. So when we look at last year's bottom-placed and second bottom-placed teams, King, they face off in round 1. That's going to be a huge game. They then take on GWS West Coast. I feel like it's really important they get off to a good start. But this is the team a lot of people are saying could be the Collingwood of 2022. Kingy, how do you see the Eagles and their prospects of a bounce back?
Yeah, look, they've been 6 years in the finals, 2 grand finals, a premiership in that space. Then they've gone 10 wins, 2 wins. So the drop-off's been quite stark. And Adam Simpson's going to need a big year to keep the locals happy. I think it's the biggest coaching challenge in the system right now, returning the Eagles to premiership contention. How quickly you can do it, whether it involves the stocks that are on hand now or a fresh set, is the challenge. But let's take a step back before we go forward. Last year, Yo, Nick Nat, McGovern, Gaff, Kelly and Sheed, so there's 6 players who you would say was the bulk of their leadership group, missed 70 games between them.
Yeah.
You can't win with kids. You can't. And we'll talk about Hawthorn later on, and we'll talk about, we've touched on the Kangaroos. You need some sort of leadership around them. It doesn't matter what method you're trying to implement. The young guys, they just can't stay with it, whether it's through concentration levels are not quite there, not understanding the structural side of the game, or they're just not fit enough, or they're just not strong enough to win their own ball. So it's a huge challenge. I don't know how many games they'll win. I'm thinking it's around that 6 to 8 for me would be around a pass mark. But is that enough to satisfy all parties?
So this is the conundrum here when you look at West Coast. The pass mark is finals because of the demographic of where they are at. So is 6 to 8 wins going to satisfy the locals at West Coast? And you have to say, no way, because you look at their plus 30s on their list, and you're right. Their success this year is all going to come down to how many games those players play, how motivated and how fit they are. They're 30-year-olds that need big years. Cripps has been a good player. He's 30 now. Darling's been a good player. He's 30. Got to get a lot out of him. Andrew Gaff, they need more out of him. He's 30 years of age now. Hearn, not sure. He's 35, so you can't expect too much. McGovern needs a big year. Nat Nui needs a big year. These are all the guys over 30. Shuey needs to play 20-plus games, but that's unlikely with where his body is at. And Yo's the same, nearly about to turn 30 this year. How much footy do they play? How motivated, how fit, and how injured is that core group that I just mentioned there will dictate how many games they win. Chuck in Kelly and a couple of others, because that's where it's at. Like, they haven't added too much. They've had to go to the draft because they haven't been there in recent years. So the draft picks coming in, you like, Ruben Gibney and players like this, and you hear good reports, but they're not going to be the difference whether you win or lose games. Hunt gives you some experience, but that's it. They haven't brought in anything in the trade period. They've lost Kennedy. There's 50 goals. They get Oscar Allen back. Hopefully he replicates what Kennedy has been able to do. How fit is the group? How motivated? How injured are they? Will decide how many games they win. They're still going to be hard to beat at home. So for me, a pass mark is finals. I don't expect them to play finals, and that's the really tough situation that Adam Simpson and the Eagles are in.
Well, I think your pass mark has to be achievable. I mean, if you're going to set a
finals is 12 wins for the Eagles?
No, I don't think they can get to 12.
Okay.
I'd be surprised they got to 12. If they did, fantastic. You're spot on. We haven't seen last year's first pick in Chesser. We really haven't seen Xavier O'Neill a lot. We've seen him a little bit, but not a lot. We want to work out who he is. Is he a contest winner? Is he a transition mid? What sort of player is he? We need to see more. He only played the 11 games last year. But I was thrilled to hear Tim Gossage, who's put on the radar that Tim Kelly will be the biggest improver in the competition.
He said he's going to have
year.
a breakout year. I felt like, Goss, did you not watch him at Geelong? If you're going to have a breakout year, you need to break out. I mean, he's already broken out. It would be a rebound year.
Well, let's not hang him on words. Let's go with the theme of what he's saying is that our man Gostradamus has said, so that gives you a bit of a window into what's happening over there. Clearly, he's a lot fitter than what he was last year. Nick Naitanui Bowl reports is the fittest he's been for some time.
Good.
Jeremy McGovern looks like a different
What about my man Yo, who was 6 kilograms too heavy last year?
He was 6 kilograms. He couldn't train. They couldn't be the full professional package that they need to be to compete in the AFL level. So I'm giving them some luxuries last year, but they're on a tightrope in 2023.
If we don't get to the Giants, we'll never get through these teams. So let's go with them. Some big outs from their team in the trade period, none more so than Jacob Hopper and Tim Taranto. They won 6 games last year. They do bring in the number 1 draft pick this year. His name is Aaron Cadman. Some other players that are in, largely dictated to by the draft. They had a really strong draft hand. Toby Bedford comes in as a mature player from Melbourne. But apart from that, more has gone out the door than has come back in terms of experience. They have a new coach also and a whole new coaching panel at the Giants. Adam Kingsley is going to take up the charge, and he's going to bring back the orange tsunami. What's your thoughts on the Giants?
He's bringing back
the tsunami.
Oh, that's good to hear. I'm just not convinced that I'm a fan of this list anymore.
Okay, explain.
I'm just not convinced that, that in the next 2 to 3 seasons we may see a complete turnover of back into the rebuild phase, and maybe they're already there.
Yeah.
But I just had a bit of a look back through. If you look at their first 2 picks in the draft from 2013 to 2020, so that's what makes up the core of your quality in that next phase over the next 2 to 3 years. They've lost 11 of those 16 picks. 11 of those 16 are no longer there. And you're talking about guys like Boyd, Pickett, Marchbank, Hopper, Kennedy, Taranto, Setterfield, Bonner, Caldwell, Haitley, Bruin. There's a heap of them, clearly. So I worry about the next phase, the next block of 2 to 3 years. Now, that's already started. We know they took 4 picks inside pick 24 last year and 2 first-rounders they've got for next year, given the trading they've had to do with Richmond. We're all waiting to see what Aaron Cadman can do as pick 1, but I'm worried that we've seen the best of Kelly and Whitfield and Cornelio. Taylor's a superstar. Toby Green. We've seen the best of those guys. And let's be honest, those 5 guys, they played a possible 110 games last year, they played 97. So they've been pretty healthy. So I just worry that we may have seen the absolute best of their best.
Yeah, I think I'm with you largely. I think it's going to be a difficult year for them, albeit they've got quality there. Like on paper, there's a core group of players that are quality. Like Kelly's still a good player. Cornelio at his best is good. Green's a really good inside mid who's young and at the right age. You mentioned Taylor, the All-Australian. Nick Haynes can still play, albeit he's on the other side of 30 now. Where do their goals come from? That would be a concern for me. Himmelberg, they're not sure. Probably back forward after making a successful move back. Jesse Hogan, unreliable in terms of his body. Riccardi, not sure whether he's a player yet. And Toby Green will get probably close to 40 goals again. He kicked 37 last year. That would be an issue. So they'll have to play faster. They'll have to defend better. But I think the depth is going to be an issue for the Giants. After that top 8, What's next? Where have
Brent
you got
Daniels, Tom Green, they're the ones that probably got to come with a rush. Where have I got them? Look, I just think it'll be a similar season. It'll be a year of growth for me. They may take a step backwards. I've got them similar to where the Kangaroos. I've got them 5, 6, 7 wins. Is that too low?
Yeah, I've got them at 8. Similar to last year, they won 6. They would be looking to improve. I mean, the way that they started was ordinary, and then they moved on the coach, of course. So it was a year of carnage. I think it'll be more settled. I think you'll get the bounce a little bit that you can get with the new coach. I think 8 wins would be a pass mark for me. I don't think 5 to 6 would be a pass. I think that'd be pretty flat with that.
No, well, it's not a pass. No, there's certainly not a pass. I just think it'll be a challenging year, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because they've worked so hard to achieve everything that in terms of growing a new football club. It's a tough gig, but this first wave is now over, and I'm wondering where to from here. That's my question.
Let's move on to the Bombers because they're always interesting. The Bombers played finals in 2021. Disastrous year for them on and off the field. Last year they were 2-10. They lost their first 3. They're poor starters. They must start the year better. For me, Essendon, in terms of the players that they have lost and brought in, once again, a lot of youth coming in. Tip and Woody will help, but they have got another young gun in Sardis, but he's injured at the moment, the number 5 pick, so you wouldn't expect too much from him in the first couple of months of the season. Will Setterfield comes in to give them some experience, as does Tip and Woody, as I said, and they've added with some speed to the forward line with the Davey twins coming in. Francis went out. Hurley retired. Devon Smith also retired. Waterman was delisted. for me, the Bombers have got to start better, Kingy. So this is their first month. Hawthorn, Gold Coast, St Kilda and GWS, all very winnable games. They've got to get some early wins under Brad Scott, who is talking patience, and he's not talking finals, and he's talking the long term, and I don't mind that, but they've got to start the season better. I know you've been a critic of the Bombers midfield, and rightly so. How do you see Essendon this year?
Yeah, I keep hearing they're young and they're inexperienced. I mean, Heppel, Stringer, Merritt, Shield, Parrish, Langford, McGrath, they've all played 100-plus games. I mean, there's enough experience there to guide the way. I think their biggest problem, they still lack a big-bodied defender for me. When they come up against the Hawkins types, the Harry Mackay types, I mean, they're everywhere now.
Tom
the
Lynch.
King brothers,
Yeah.
they're everywhere. So you need a big, a big-bodied fullback to handle these guys. They haven't got that sort of player. Reed, he hasn't really seen enough football.
No.
He's been too injury-prone. And then I think their second tall forward option is still a mystery for me. Okay, Peter Wright had a fantastic season last year, but who's the next?
It's not going to be Wiedemann. Like if Wiedemann hasn't made it yet, I mean, it's okay. You give up nothing to get him, and he gives you some depth. But I don't think he's not a bona fide second key forward, is he?
He's the tallest small in the competition. Yeah. He doesn't make contact like a big player, like a strong presence full forward. I'm a little bit with you on that one. So I think they've got problems at the very the extremes of the ground, if you like, fullback and probably that second tall target forward. For me, this year is about seeing what Andy McGrath actually is as a footballer.
Big year for him. I've got that written down. It's a huge year for him. He's been underwhelming as a number one pick. Every time he speaks to the media, gee, this guy's impressive, and he says all the right things, but I watch him play and it's pick it up and hack it. Or
Given
pick
that
it up
performance, can he be captain?
And snap it around his body. There's no damage and there's no substance to the possessions that he wins. As impressive as he is off the field, but he's yet to establish himself as not even a B-grade AFL footballer yet.
Well, he needs to be the reason Essendon win. He has to go from a nice to have to a player that you say, yep, gee, you don't want him getting the ball. We need to put some time into him. I wonder how his footy CV would read. If he finished tomorrow, what would it read? It would be an interesting discussion. I think that they get great service out of Parrish and Merritt, but they need help. I love the fact they've put Hobbs and Perkins in there through the pre-season, exposing them to more midfield minutes. There's enough talent around the edges to really do something quite special this year. They won 7 games last year. It looks, in watching their pre-season training, I'm fascinated to see through the NAB series. It's very difficult to assess everything they do because you're not sure what phase they're at with their training. But I'll be watching the NAB series closely to see if they are a go-forward team. If they are playing the Geelong brand of football, whether it's take territory and back your defenders to get it done on turnover, or they're a safe lateral ball use team. That's my biggest watch. Little asterisk there.
What's the pass mark for wins for the Bombers?
7 wins last year. New coach comes in. You sack a coach, you must think you're better than 7 wins. So I'd be saying that 10 would be a pass.
I had them down in 10 in red ink there as well. Good young players who we like. Love Perkins. Cox, who knows, but does have potential. Reed's always injured, so not sure. But Durham and Martin love the way that they play their football. So there is a little bit to like at the Bombers, but they're going to have to start the season a lot better than they have in recent years. And we're up to the Crows, who we've both said this morning were the most difficult team to assess when looking at what a pass mark will be this year. They bring in Isaac Rankin, who's really going to help. That's their marquee recruit. Apart from that, they didn't have high-end draft talent. But Max Michaelini was number 17 pick in the end. They bid on him as a father-son who they like, but once again, as a young player, won't make a massive impact. Out goes Luke Brown, Ben Davis, Billy Frampton. Fisher Mackesy is gone. James Rowe and Brett Turner were delisted. It's year 4 of the rebuild for Matty Nix. Kingy?
3, 7 and 8 wins they've gone over the last 3 years. And I start hearing the murmurings, now it's time for Adelaide. Now they've got to make finals. Now they've got a spike. I just don't think they have enough quality midfielders to mount that spike. And I understand the penchant to put Isaac Rankin in as a bits and pieces midfielder because of what you see around stoppages and what he can do. But you're going to sacrifice some goals if you do that. And I don't actually know if he has the tank to be that midfielder that the outside noise is talking about. I think they're a really good defensive team. I think offensively they've studied over the last couple of seasons. I think you got the right coach, but I just fear that one bad season will rock the confidence in Matty Nix, which I don't know whether that's justified or not. I'm looking forward to seeing how he plays Riley Thilthorpe this year and what he can become. What actually is Riley Thilthorpe?
I think they're trying to turn him into Blixarves. That's what I feel. I've read some comments throughout the pre-season. He's been doing a lot of secondary ruck work and going up against
Blitzars or Jackson?
Riley O'Brien. Well, yeah, similar. I think Fremantle are trying to turn Jackson into Blixarves as well. So attend the stoppage, and I think that's what Riley Thilthorpe may do. And then you play as a midfielder, but you can push forward. Yes, he can play. He's got a massive tank, and he has spoken how he loves playing in the ruck. So whether he's a second ruck or whether he's a more mobile ruckman who can play on ball, I think there's a lot of teams exploring that off the back of what Geelong have done. But you're right, he's the big wild card for me. Really like him as a player, but hasn't captivated the 5-goal debut that he's got. But we'll get there, I think. The forward line's elite. So I think their forward line, their forward six is
elite.
I think their forward six stacks up with anyone really.
With anyone?
Yeah, I think it does. When you look at Fogarty now, who has to be a 45, 50 goal forward, and his second half of the year was excellent. Walker, by any measure with your mates at Champion Data, will be an elite forward on any measure. Rankin, by your mates at Champion Data, is elite. Rochelli's a very good young player. Saligo's a good player. McAdam, floats through there. So I think they have options in their forward line. Is it to the level that Carlton's is and Geelong's is? Probably not. But their top six forwards are stacks up. But their midfield's where it's at. I don't know what they've done with their recruiting in the midfield. You just recruited the same player. Pedler. No, pick 10. He's the same player as what Berry is. Laird is a small midfielder. Crouch is a small midfielder. Sloane's a small midfielder. Keys is a small midfielder. They're all competitive animals who get 10 tackles each per game, but don't hurt you with their possessions. All of them. So Dawson, he's not a midfielder, but he helps in that space and can float through across halfback on the wing. But their inside midfield group, they're animals, but they don't hurt you.
Yeah, and we know the way the game has gone, and we keep referring to Geelong because they play with a dare and a flair that the other teams, you either come with that because the game has changed, or you get left behind. And I'm sure Matty Nix, he's aware of all of this. I'm interested to see how they play early in the NAB series and early in the season to see whether they are going to spike from 8 wins. But I actually think a pass mark this year would be holding ground. 8 wins, take your percentage from 87 up to, say, mid-90s. That'd be a win for me. But I just don't know if this list right now is still good enough to arm the coach with what he needs to spike.
10 to 12 would be a pass mark for me. That's the part. They got to be in finals contention halfway through the year. Into year
12's
4.
a lot of wins, isn't it?
Yeah, 12's hard to get to. And does 12 even get you there? Sometimes it doesn't, as we saw last year. You've got to win most of your home games and then sneak a couple away from home. But that would be the pass mark. Do I think they can get there? Probably not. But 10 to 12 for me. Let's move on to...
How many goals does Rankin kick for the year?
What did he get last
29 last year. 29 in a team that underperformed.
2 a game. He's got to get 2 a game. So 40.
40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would be a good result.
So can you afford to have him 40% midfielder if you need 2 goals a game out of him?
I think he can do a bit of Tom Papley stuff. A bit of attend the centre bounce and push forward. And Rochelli's a little bit the same, albeit he's lesser on the progression because it's his second year, but has the capabilities.
I'd rather
to
work
do that.
with what you've got,
Okay.
what you know you've got as a forward.
But if your biggest hole is we don't have any midfielders that do damage, and there's one that can, I think it's worth exploring. But we'll get an indication of that throughout the pre-season. And lastly, Hawthorn. They won 8 games last year with a percentage of 89, which surprised me. Started the season really well, but what we need to speak about is what's gone out the door, and that has been spoken about a lot. Gunston's gone, McAvoy's gone, Mitchell's gone, Phillips is gone, O'Meara is gone, Shields is gone. A lot of experience over the not just last year, a couple of years. And you were struck by how young they are, Kingy. The pass mark for me, I've said it, is 5 for Hawthorn. I'll get straight to it. I think that's about where it sits for the Hawks this year. Unfortunately, it's going to be pretty tough.
I think this is the youngest team I've seen. Obviously the new franchises are very, very young, but this is a seriously young team. Doesn't mean they can't perform. Doesn't mean they can't excite. 8 wins last year. I think Weddle, the young kid, has had a fantastic pre-season. The Oakley Chargers boy who was pick 18 last year. Jath looks like a different specimen now. Physically, looks like he's put on 4 or 5 kilo, in the right places. He's 23. He's played 48 games. I think he'll have a serious year. Lloyd Meek will slot in beautifully and put some pressure on this ruck squeeze, with Reeves and Lynch. I think they'll really miss the leadership of McAvoy, and I think that will be a challenge for them. I know he only played 8 games last year, but Sicily will come in where he plays. It looks like he'll play centre-half back, but I was fascinated by his work in the midfield late last year. But I'm a little bit with you. At the end of the day, you come back to, okay, Sam Mitchell is the coach, and they've clearly got a game plan that's allowed them to play some pretty good footy, particularly in the back half of last year. I thought there were some winnable opportunities for them, some winnable games. But if he can hold ground at 8 wins, I think that'd be a huge effort.
I bought a lot of stock in Denver Granger Brass early.
Oh, too much.
And I've held it. Though. I'm not selling.
You're not. This is just
I'm
stubborn.
not selling my stock of Granger Brass.
It's got crypto written all over it. This has.
It's worth a lot of money in a couple of years. And Will
you
Day,
said he was the best player in that draft.
that draft, I did.
How's it looking?
Did. Well, I'd have to go back and look at who was selected with him.
I'd have to go back.
But I haven't sold my stock, which is the most important thing. It's not a loss until you sell, is what they tell me. So he's going to be important for them. Will Day, I hope he plays a full season because, Hawthorn fans love what he does. He's tough and played a bit of midfield last year. And they got some good young players coming through. A lot of raps on Cam McKenzie as well, who was drafted early for the Hawks. So there is some optimism. Dylan Moore, 3-year deal this week. Is a great story. He's 23 years of age. Hopefully Impey plays a full year and they still get a lot of goals out of Bruce. There is some upside, but I think all in all, with Mitch Lewis going down, it's going to be a pretty tough year for the Hawks.